streaming live on YouTube. Made it. Oh, I think Kate Williams has said that we can go. So noswaith dda pawb. How are we all? I'm sorry we can't see you, but hopefully you can see all of us. It's the first time we've done a webinar Q&A, so please, bear with us. We'll try and get through all your questions. Before we do start with questions, I'd just like to, I think we should go around the squares, I suppose, and introduce ourselves as the Nye and Jennie company. So I'll go first. My name is Gaynor Stiles and I'm the Artistic Director of Theatre and Org and also the Director of Nye and Jennie. Med, do you want to go next?
Meredith Barker, writer of Nye and Jennie.
Louise.
And I'm Louise Collins and I play Jenny Lee.
And Gareth.
And I'm Gareth John Bale and I play Nye Bevan.
Well, welcome. How are you all? Before, we haven't got any questions at the moment. They haven't started to come in yet. So while we're waiting for that, I just wanted to just see how you're all doing. I know we saw each other last week on Zoom, but we haven't seen each other for ages. So how are you all faring up in lockdown? I'll go with Gareth first. Because it looks quite nice where you are, Gareth. So how are you doing?
It's lovely here. Yeah, it's great. I'm out in West Wales, and as you can see, I'm out and about. So I'm doing okay at the moment. The light is pretty good, but if it starts to get dark, I might have to find a street light, and then I'll be like one of the spies that was spying on Nye and Jennie back in the day.
I didn't jump
outside the window.
I didn't jump this time.
I did.
Did you? So Louise, where are you? Where are you at lockdown?
I'm in lockdown in Bridgend with my parents and have been here for the 16 weeks. So yeah, thank you to Mum and Dad for having me.
Oh, bless them. And how about you, Med? Where are you?
I'm in Narberth with my wonderful wife Shirley and my English Springer Spaniel. And yeah, we've been really lucky. Come out of our front door, if you go right, you're in Narberth, go left, you're in the countryside straight away. So we've been very lucky in that respect. So it's been a proper lockdown, but we've had the countryside and we've had a few shops have been open, so we haven't suffered that badly. It's just, just missing people, missing that kind of face-to-face contact that we so dearly love as theatre people. So that's the only thing that's bothering us at the moment, really.
And how are you? How was it all for you this evening, seeing Nye and Jennie? Because I think it was the 2017 version, not the 2018 version that went out on the road. But how was that for you? Nerve-wracking? I think this is more nerve-wracking actually. But how was it for you all, Louise?
Utterly nerve-wracking. I thought a few days ago, it'd be fine because it's done. There's nothing we can do about it. But the 3 o'clock came, and when we were doing Nye and Jennie, from 3 on, I'd have this knot inside. And today, from 3 on, there it was again. And it was worse. I don't know, maybe I'm having a feeling of how you both felt when you had to sit there and just watch. Yeah, and then as soon as the soundscape started, I just had this weird out of body, where should I be? I should be on the stage. This is really scary. It was, I've never experienced anything like it. So, thank you for, it's the best that we can do, really, isn't it, under the circumstances?
Yeah, definitely. Look, we've got questions coming in, so I'm going to hit the questions if that's all right. So this is a question: how much of the dialogue is from records from the time? Specifically, we love the insult about being an unsuccessful prostitute and the one about love and vermin. Please tell me they are true. Med, do you want to answer that?
Well, to begin with, it's a real mix of records from the time, myself trying to do Nye speak and Jennie speak. But those two insults are very Nye and they are very true. Nye definitely said them. And so, but it was quite easy in that I share, if you read a lot of Nye Bern and hear a lot about Nye Bern, I've just understood that I've got the same humour, and I think Gaynor and Gareth and Louise have as well. So we were able to actually do Nye speak and Jennie speak quite easily, I think. But those two are true.
Excellent.
Yeah, and if I can just jump in there, they were a pleasure to say as well. I mean, it was all terrific, but certain lines do stay with you, and they do. There's also a beautiful line in scene 2 about they were the birds who felt the earthquake before the rest of us.
That's me. That's me.
I know. Fair play. And yeah, that's what I'm saying. You know, it was all beautiful to say, and some of those lines just still resonate. And listening to some of it earlier on, it brought it all back. It was wonderful.
Well, actually, Gareth, there's a question now. This is going to be a tough one for you, so be careful how you answer this now. But
right.
Hi, Gareth. You played Grav and an Iron Bevan. Both were great. Which do you prefer and why? Careful.
Whichever one on at the time.
Oh.
The honest, both here.
That might be really good timing.
Yeah, Gareth, your Wi-Fi's cutting out a little bit then, which could have saved you, I think.
I think that's saved. Yeah, saved.
Yeah. We'll come back. We're going to come back to Gareth in that one.
I just thought that was a story.
He's still going on.
Oh, he's still sorry. Sorry, Gareth. I'm just going to...
Med Barker. Oh, yeah. Cut out, have I?
You did cut out, so it could have saved you.
Saved by the internet,
right.
there,
I was saved by the internet, was I? Am I back?
Oh, it's a little bit sketchy, Gar. I'm going to move on to another question, but might come back to you. Is that all right?
Yeah.
Okie dokie. Okay, I'm going to answer this one if this is okay. Where was Nye and Jennie filmed, in which theatre? It was filmed in the Met in Artillery, and they were our co-producing partners, and it was an absolute joy. I've always been indebted to them for giving us that opportunity. The team there were just phenomenal. I loved being in Artillery. It was just brilliant. So big hello to them out there tonight. Yeah, it was great. Next question then is, oh, I love these ones. How long did it take to learn all of your lines? This is from Mena Rogers. This is how long did it take you? Louise, do you want to take that question?
Am I right in remembering, did we have 3 weeks to rehearse?
Yeah.
And when we did our first read-through on the first Monday, Med, I don't know if you can remember the time of our original draft was, but it was much longer than what we have now. So I think it's fair to say it took us 3 weeks then, Gar, because whatever we had, beforehand wasn't what we ended up with at the end of the 3 weeks.
Yeah, it had to be quite shorter than 3 weeks, didn't it? I mean, we had to get sort of up and running in 2 or just over 2 weeks, I would say. It wasn't so much the lines that bothered me, it was the dancing. But we had Maggie Rawlinson with us, who put us through our paces and did a great job. But in terms of the lines, if you get a good script, I think it goes in easier, and you wanted to work on this. And I think, Louise, I'm right in saying that we both worked on a hell of a lot of research beforehand to make sure that when we came to it, the lines were just there because we had that knowledge behind us.
Yeah, we'd been cast quite a while up before. So we'd been given the time to do the research, which was brilliant, because sometimes you only get to know, a few days before project, but with this one, it was a few months. So I think both of us had spent a lot of time researching both of them. I went up to Loch Gelly and spent time where she was from. I went to Edinburgh and found the flat when she was a student, because I felt that journey for me, going from a girl from Bridgend, was a far greater journey to get to Jennie in Scotland. So yeah, I think that the amount of work that we'd both done before we started, then we were able to work on the text, weren't we? So
yeah, that all it massively plays a part, doesn't it? You feel as though you've made decisions about the character and the type of Jennie Lee or Nye Bevan that you want to put across. So when it comes to the lines, it just feels natural.
Can I just remind people who are in the Q&A this evening, at the bottom of your screen, there's like a little button, there's like a Q&A, and you can actually ask us questions on that. If you type your questions in there, that would be great. And we have got a few questions coming in, so that's brilliant. But if you want to ask us a question, just go down to the bottom of the screen there, and it'll say Q&A, and just type your question in. Diolch yn fawr. Okay, so we've got another one. This has come in on email, this has. Fantastic to see the play. How do you think you would see current politics with this as a background? Have we learned anything? Oh, well, from my point of view, I find it really disheartening. I'm sorry, but that's how I feel at the moment. I really desperately want Nye and Jennie back to give us a good old shaking, I think. I don't know, what do others think about that? Med, do you want to?
I think politicians back at that time, of course, there's always exceptions, but generally they tended to be far more honest about who they were publicly and privately. That's, I think, with Nye and Jennie, what you see is what you get publicly and privately, whereas too often now when politicians either resign or they're sacked or whatever, they go into a media career, all of a sudden they're completely different people to the ones that you see as politicians. And you think to yourself, well, where was that person before? And it's just because it's a disingenuous thing to be doing now, being a politician. You're having to toe a party line. Today I read an article about basically the government is being run by Gove, Johnson, and that creep who got lost in Durham. So yes, it is very different, but there's not much we can do about it at the moment, apart from put the right politicians up against them. I think we might be in a good position now with Starmer, but we'll see.
I'm going to go to the next question, and it was, if you were creating the play today, what would you change?
Well, that's interesting, isn't it? I don't know, Med, if you want to take over from me, but the version you saw tonight was our very first one in 2017. And then we recreated it for the tour a year later, and there were lots of different bits. And as I was watching it, I was like, oh yes, you know, so there were, we were given that time, a year, to sort of digest really what we had originally and then what we could tweak. We were really lucky to be able to do that. A year later, and so the version you saw, you know, you'll never see the same show twice, and that's what's a shame about these online screenings. They're never, you know, you, when you're in that audience, you only ever experience that one show, but this particular, you saw it the year before we went on the tour, so I don't know if you want to chip in.
Yeah, you're right, Bach. It gave us time to digest it, and there was a feeling on the first one of getting it done and wondering, new piece of work, is it going to work at all? Because you never know. Director, writer, actors, everyone else involved, you just don't know. And so the second time round, it gave us a chance to really bed in and think, okay, well, we can be confident in the choices that we've made. What I will say is that change much, I'm not sure. It would improve. It would always improve. It's that would be the nature of it, because you've got people involved that would want it to get better and better and better. But we were surrounded by people who just made it better, just by being there, and the work that they brought to it, the experience that they brought to it. Med's words were fantastic. And then I think that the trouble sometimes with new writing is that you try and force something or an idea on top of it. You want to put it in a particular setting. And I think Gaynor directed it subtly and beautifully. I think Kitty's set and costume added to it. Christo's lighting design, Jack's music, it all just added to it. And I think the relationship that Louise and I then sort of forged helped it as well, you know, especially when it comes to those more intimate moments. And we became friends because we didn't really know each other that well beforehand, and we became friends off stage. And I think it all sort of came together, and we were helped by, as Gaynor said earlier on, the team in Abertillery, as well as the team from Nanog, people like Geraint and Sasha and Anya and Joe.
Meg, do you want to come in there as well?
Yeah, the only thing that keeps coming back to me, and it came back to me tonight when I watched the play, is, and it's just a chronological difficulty, is that Jennie's great achievements happened after Nye died. And that's really difficult to get in the play, to have Jennie on her own, because it becomes a one-person show then. And we didn't really want that. We wanted, it's called Nye and Jennie for a reason. So if there was anything, I've got a few ideas about how I would change that so we get some of that accomplishment in there about the Open University and the Arts Council. But that's the only thing that I'm thinking about, really.
Diolch yn fawr, thank you. When you are rehearsing, does the dialogue, watch it now, does the dialogue get changed at all from the original, or do you stick with the script?
It's butchered, I tell you. Butchered.
How long was the original, Med? You can't have two people up there for 3 hours.
I'll just say one thing. And it's all about a technical thing. When we did the first run, we may have been going to Edinburgh. And I remember saying, well, we've got to get it down in time, because Gareth is especially experienced in Edinburgh.
Right, yeah.
We needed to get it down in time. We had a very limited rehearsal time. I couldn't be in both rehearsal spaces because we were rehearsing at Nanog and in Abertillery. So I said to Gaynor and to the cast, you've got to like take what's there and take it down to what's needed, basically. So yeah, it does. And as far as the writer's concerned, I said that it should.
I suppose it wasn't ever changed, just cut. So there was never, there was never changing of dialogue. There was never changing of what you wrote, Med, was there? It was more of...
No, and I think it's always about changes between scenes as well. You just think to yourself, once that's things that can happen that Kitty can bring to bear and Maggie can bring to bear, and you just think to yourself, well, I don't want to interfere with their creativity. I think if they come up with a solution, then my solutions on the script should be put to one side and their solutions should come forward. So it's about everybody working together. And that's the great thing about watching this film tonight, by the way, is that we were all in the audience. All the creatives were in the audience watching it and making notes. So we could attack Gaynor at the end and say, I think this, I think that.
Yeah, and I think the important thing as well with something like that is having the eye of the audience and the ear of the audience as well, making sure you can take them on this journey with us, and that we don't put things in there that is going to perhaps make them question their political, do they know their political history, do they know the history of Wales, do they know, so you don't want to get them questioning too much, so they take some the eye off the relationship, really. So it was, so it was, like Louise said, I think it was more of an editing process rather than changing, I think. We've got some great questions here. I've done that one. So I got to tick them off and I've done them, so that's good. In what ways do you think theatre will change as a result of the current situation? I've got lots of theories on this, I think. Like we'll know, I think tomorrow, Wednesday, they're going to make an announcement from what you can see on, social media. You think it's going to be a good result. We're going to have some sort of investment into the arts. I think what it draws into question, I think it's a little bit, I've said this before, like our key workers, freelancers are our key workers, actors, there's nothing without those people on stage, without the writers, without all those creative teams. And they're invariably freelance. They don't get, there's no basic wage there for them. And so I think it's highlighted that enormously. What's great about Wales is that it's devolved, the arts is devolved. And so we're not sort of connected with the UK government, though we do depend on them to give us the money in the first place. But I think we look at things differently here. We have a different history, we have a different culture, and I think we have to protect that first and foremost, as far as I'm concerned. The arts is embedded in education and health and well-being now with this government, and the Senedd. So I think, we are key for all this, for the solution, really. We're not the problem. We're not going there with cap in hand. We're not the problem, we're the solution. And I think that's potentially extremely exciting for a vibrant art scene in Wales going forward. That's my take on it. I don't know whether somebody sees it differently. I don't know.
I think
it's great.
theatre is naturally a protean activity. It changes shape, and it will adapt to the times, and it will survive. It may not be able to survive in the big buildings and in the bucket seats. It may have to go back to the Greek model where we're all outside in amphitheatres. If that's the way it is, then so be it. There's an amphitheatre in Carmarthen that's been there for purpose for over 2,000 years. So that's the way I feel about it. The actors, us creatives, we can keep going, but it just may not be in it the way we saw it in that film tonight. It may not be like that for a very long time, but theatre will survive, but it'll just change shape.
Yeah, well, following on from that, sorry to cut in there, Louise, but following on, there's a question right underneath that. Do you think small local theatres are going to be able to survive? I would say they have to survive. It's not will they have to. For the community, you know, especially like the way Jennie Lee saw it, really, you know, these they're like beacons in those communities, and they've always been that, you know, the welfare halls, the miners' institutes, they are so key to those communities. You know, like Ystrad when we're there, so many other activities go on. It's not just a theatre building. It's not just that. And I think communities depend on a wealth of different things from those centres. So they have to. There's no argument there, really. It's just putting our argument clear as arts practitioners, being clear what we want is the key, I think.
And us as a community to support the theatre when they need us back in whatever form.
Yeah. We were extremely, you know, I was overwhelmed by how the audiences responded to this show. There's so much love for it, which is brilliant. But, you know, on that tour, it was just phenomenal. The audiences that wanted to come out and see it. And I think what it says as well is that people do like drama. They you know, it's not all about Hairspray and Shrek and things like that. It's about good plays on stages down the road from you. And I think that's what's important. And
stories that people want to hear.
Yeah.
It's important to get the right story out there, not just any old story, but I think this one really did resonate in 2017, the following year on tour, and I think it would resonate now as well.
Yeah. Uh-oh, look out. Stand by, everybody. Okay, I'm going on to the next. We've got loads of amazing questions here, people. So, was Aneurin the last working class hero? Ooh.
No, you're looking at 4 now.
I hope not.
No, I hope not. I think that's the best answer. I hope not.
I hope not. Yeah. And moving on. Thank you, Gareth, for that one. How much of the play is from fact?
Oh, it's all fact.
Med, do you want to go for that?
All of it up until the final scene, which is more a work of the imagination. But everything that, all the problems that they tackle and all the people that they talk about, that's all very real. But plays, novels, any work of art, films, they have their own. If it's a real story, they kind of crush it and change it to a shape that suits it. So yeah, it's real, but it's us as well. I think, you know, there's a lot of us in that. Me in the writing, the performances, and the direction, and all whole design. So I think there's a lot of thought other than what the research was all about. And you could keep researching this forever. There's so much written about them. In the end, you have to bridge little gaps and bridge little areas with your own feelings and your own talent, hopefully. So.
Well, yeah, I was just going to jump in there and say that you did an incredible job, and I think the whole team did an incredible job, but it started with you, Med, because you've got 2 people here who lived through some incredible times and the things that they went through, which, you know, are mentioned in the play. And you have to go into detail on, you know, Spanish Civil War, World War II, the hydrogen bomb, Cold War, you know, all of that. Not to mention things like, I mean, we don't quite get to Jennie Lee's influence on things like the arts and the Open University, but, you know, the NHS as well, and mining, you know, it just, there's loads there, and no wonder it was almost 3 hours to begin with. And I think everyone did a great job to put the play on that we did.
just to say that the important thing was, and this is what always the process of Gaynor before casting ever happened was, let's just write it and see if it works and see if we need it. If we don't need it, it's just words, we can just bin it. So there was a Suez section where Nye really came into his own, but it was just Nye for a long time. And it wasn't about them. We put Jennie in the background. We really didn't need it because the points that were made about him as a person were made already before we got to the Suez part. So we binned that, and I've been, a couple of books that I read about it, but I learned a lot and developed a lot as a person doing that work. So
I think when we went to the Open University to where all Jennie's papers are, I think that sort of blew our minds, didn't it, Med? See all her school reports, diaries, her time as the arts minister, the first arts minister. It was just phenomenal that she kept everything. And what a treasure that is now. And it's great that it's open to it's open for anybody to go and see. It's an absolute treasure, that is. So yeah.
That was a brilliant day. And that was after this was filmed. That was 3 months after this was filmed. That's how obsessive compulsive we were about that. There's more to find, there's more to look at. So yeah.
I think we sort of the second version we all came to Jennie trying to hold on to his memory. So we were trying to grasp those moments when she's talking to the audience on her own. It's all about trying to conjure him back, about needing him back. And I think we could do that today, couldn't we?
And we talked a lot about it being a play about grief and about losing people, and how you, in those moments, as someone who, a married couple, how you try and get that person back, and the loneliness and the isolation about that. I think that was really, really heartbreaking. Absolutely, not just because she was Jennie, but any woman who's lost her husband who she absolutely idolised. So that came across so well in the show. Goosebumps time, really.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any plans to tour the play again when it is safe to do so? I would probably say yes. There probably will be, because there's so much love for this play. It's still relevant. When things perhaps. I don't think it'll ever be irrelevant. I don't think Ira Bevan and Jennie Lee could ever be irrelevant. So yeah, it's difficult for us at the moment at Nanog, because obviously we just don't know what's going to happen. So we take every day as it comes to us. Our priority has been to focus on supporting freelancers and supporting our venues, really. So that's what we'll try to do. And hopefully when we all get back into the theatre again, I can't wait, honestly, I can really see it, that moment when the lights go down. And because we do a lot of plays for children, when the lights go down in the theatre for the kids, when we do the school shows, there's like this massive kerfuffle. And I think that's what's going to happen with adults when we do the next show. The lights will go down and there'll be this buzz of excitement that the play's going to start. Like, absolutely can't wait for that. Can't wait for it. Not a question, but we wanted to say how much we loved the show, the set and the lighting. Yeah. Well, yeah, we were extremely lucky. And, I was extremely lucky having Kitty Callister, who did the set and costumes, and Hudson Tackle, who did the lighting. And what was, I think, brilliant about that sort of collaboration really was the fact that they were both in the rehearsal room, which is really a real rare treat for the creative team, because as freelancers, they're busy. They've got to take about 5 jobs. So it's like they're all over the place. Very rarely will you get the creative team all together in the room during rehearsals. They normally come and see the run on the Friday. And it's fine. That's the way we work. But this one, they were in the room with me, so it was like brilliant, because all the time we kept like enriching the process. And I think that's what you see on the stage. That's, that dedication to the end product, really. Yeah, it was absolutely beautiful. It was like paintings all the time, wasn't it? Absolutely.
Can I just say about Christoph? Just one day he came to a matinee on his motorbike from Cardiff up to Leary, watched the matinee. We went for some food, some chips and whatever. And he watched the evening show. Then he moved a light that far And then he said, my work here is done. But that's the amount of attention that he was giving the whole show. He would just watch and watch and watch and then realise that's where there's an issue and just change a tiny bit. So,
and I think it's important as well to sort of just mention that they're all based in Wales. They're all sort of either they've come here to college or they come here for work, but they're all made Wales their home. And they're incredible. There's the wealth of talent here is just unbelievable, really. We're really, really lucky.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know how you felt, Gar, but tonight was the first time I actually saw the set and the lighting.
Cool.
Yeah,
So,
I know what you mean. Yeah. And as I
Um,
said earlier on, we were so lucky to have everyone that just pulled together, and everyone's contribution made the show better, I think. And also including Jack Poe, as I mentioned, and Emma Stevens-Johnson, who worked with us on the dialect and the accent work. Just terrific. What an absolute joy to have her work. And Maggie Rawlinson, because God knows I'm not the greatest mover, but yeah, she was terrific. It really, really got how it is, what it's like to work with actors. Yeah, so I just had a great time surrounded by wonderful people.
Did you improvise any of your lines? This is not me asking now, but did you improvise any of your lines whilst performing if you forgot your scripted line?
Only in matinees.
You never did, Gareth. No,
Never. No, and neither did you. No. It's a little bit like Shakespeare in that respect. If you tried to go off on this one, you would never get back. You'd be completely lost. So no, it was important to stay switched on throughout, and also a fair bit of pressure. I'm sure Louise felt it as well, playing Jennie Lee. But as Nye Bevan, he's known as this great orator. If you're up there and you're messing your lines up and tripping over a line every 5 minutes, then it's not going to have a good look, is it? So no, I did feel a bit of pressure on that. So that was important, I think, to both of us.
I think there was a time, perhaps in the second time we did it, Nanog had bought a table tennis table, hadn't we? So the lines were sort of, you practiced line runs during table tennis.
There was no lunch break. We were
back and forth.
It was very much back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And halfway through watching tonight, I was like, we never left the stage.
No.
There was no time to breathe. So that you playing the table tennis whilst practicing line learning was really helpful, actually.
Yeah, it's a good addition to the Nanog base, I think.
Don't drop the ball.
I think the wig was whispering in Gareth's ear anyway. If he was faltering in any way, the wig was having a...
Yeah, had a life of its own.
What was the thought process behind deciding to... this is a good question, sorry. What was the thought process behind deciding to produce Nye and Jennie as opposed to Nye and the NHS or some other approach?
It started with Jennie Lee's book, My Life with Nye.
Yeah.
That's what happened. That's what you talked. Our first meeting, Gaynor, was about that book and what could come of that book. And then I went away and read the book, and I said, we decided it's Nye and Jennie. It's the two of them. Because her life was just so phenomenal, and so many people going, who?
Yeah.
And you're thinking, wait a minute. And of course, this is what happened. It didn't happen in Scotland, but this happened so often that people were coming up to me saying, I walked in knowing about Nye, and I came out fascinated by Jennie. And I just think, well, that's exactly how it should work. But it started with that book, My Life with Nye, by Jennie Lee, which you wrote in the early 80s.
And I know that you said, Med, you look back and you think we couldn't tell the story about her being the first Minister of the Arts, and we couldn't tell the story about the Open University because the play ends with the death of Nye. But it's their partnership, isn't it? It's their partnership. And you said earlier about politicians today being very public and having a different private life. Well, it was a big decision to set it within their living room. And it's really, the play is their relationship.
Yeah, I think Gaynor was talking about it earlier on as well, about it couldn't be about so many things. If you read just the foot biography of Bevan. It is nearly literally as long as the Bible. And it's the history of the Labour Party, because Jennie Lee, his grandfather, was friends with Keir Hardie. They were born in 1897, 1900, around that time. So their lives were the Labour Party up until 1988, if you include Jennie. And it's just, there's so much history in there, and they lived every bit of it. If Nye wasn't around, she lived it. She knew everybody. He knew everybody up to the point he died. So it's to the point where people say, why didn't you have this bit in? Why didn't you have that bit in? It'd be as long as life itself, and it would never live. That's the problem. And in a drama, and I think this is what you learn from Shakespeare, is that he knew how to pick in people's lives. In Henry V, he picked on a certain line, stuck with it. And that's what you've got to do with something like Nye and Jennie, is just go with their relationship and their relationship alone. And if it wasn't about their relationship, then it wasn't it.
I think as well, there was a real, I grew up knowing about Nye and Bevan, didn't know anything about Jennie Lee. And again, it was about this thing of like, hang on a minute now, who's the woman here? What's going on here? And I was very much that, to get that strong woman on stage, and for people to learn about it and to be inspired by her as well. I think, like today, I was just looking back on some of the things as well. And usually it's just astonishing, really, what she actually achieved. I think it was something like she increased the arts budget threefold, Yeah. And then George Osborne cut it by a third. So, that's what we're dealing with here. So I think she's just amazing. And I know there was a question that came in today, didn't it, about, what would Jennie Lee feel like now? What would she be saying about the arts today?
She'd be furious, wouldn't she?
Yeah.
She'd be furious.
I sort of feel she wouldn't have allowed it to happen. I think she would have went floor with them.
Yeah, I think she would have. I think there'd be a lot of frightened politicians around if Jennie Lee was there.
Yeah.
Yeah, the thing to remember about her, and she was canny in this respect, was when she was offered these jobs, she said, yeah, by Wilson, she said, yeah, as long as I'm only answering to you.
Yeah.
So she'd be a junior in department, and you'd have a minister of the crown there going, I got somebody down the corridor who I can't have a row with, because she will just walk into number 10, have a word with my boss, and I'm supposed to be her boss, and end my career. And she would have been ruthless about it. But she knew, she learned this from Bevan, because she was real idealist to begin with. And she wouldn't have done it without Ray. And Bevan said, find the power. Where's the power? And she just said, right, if I've got to do this work, I'm going to answer to one person. That's going to be the Prime Minister. So that's how you get things done.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Ask a woman, innit? I don't know what the problem is.
Well, right, I was going to say, to add to that, I was going to say that, that there's that saying that behind every great man is an even greater woman, which I think is a nonsense anyway. And I think it's especially the case here, because I don't think Jennie Lee was ever behind Nye Bevan. She would have been his equal, stood right by his side, if anything, probably knocking down walls so that he could walk through. So yeah, I just thought that she was a remarkable woman, and I didn't know much about her, like pretty much everyone here, I think, didn't know much about her before we did this play, and left absolutely fascinated, and I'm still fascinated by her.
Yeah. Okay, we've got a few little short questions which are a little bit practical. It's like, we lived Eye of the Storm, so on Friday, will you be putting more shows online like this in the coming weeks? The response to this show and Eye of the Storm for Nan has been phenomenal, amazing, and we're just like buoyed by that, really. I think for us, it's, again, we go back to supporting freelancers and supporting the venues. So if we can look at our back catalogue, I suppose, and see what we have there, and we feel that it's the right thing to do at the right time, then we will be putting more things out. But, thank you ever so much, everybody, for supporting tonight, and also, on Friday with Eye of the Storm. So, diolch yn fawr iawn. How long will this broadcast be available for audiences? Can we watch again? Yes, you can watch it again. It's available for 2 weeks. And I'm sure if we feel, oh, look, there's more interest in it, then it may stay on for a little bit longer. But I'd need to speak to my dear friends here, the creative team and the actors, really. And then there's another question. Meg, you had a question sent to you. I sent it over to you. regarding, it's a great question, mind, Tony Blair and the privatisation of the NHS. So
yeah. This goes back to, you know, how a two-handed play gets constructed. I remember we had a discussion about all the historical names that they could talk about.
Yeah.
How many would people actually remember? And in the end, we got to Churchill and maybe two others, was there?
Beaverbrook.
Maybe.
Beaverbrook.
After that, it's just kind of dodgy because people, will they understand who this is? Blair is compared to a really quite famous at the time politician in the 50s called Hugh Gateskill. He's called Gateskillite. Hugh Gateskill was one of the laughing boys of Eton. I'm not sure if it was Eton exactly, but he went straight from university to the Treasury and then ended up being a junior minister and then ended up being Chancellor of the Exchequer. And it was his idea that there should be a tax on dentures and spectacles in 1951. And of course, what that was all about was America was saying, we're giving you a fortune through, I think, the Marshall Plan. I'm being quite simplistic about all of this. Why aren't you giving us any more back for the Korean War? And so they decided to put a tax on these things. And of course, this love for America is a kind of characteristic of certain politicians. And of course, this is what Blair's got in common with Gateskill, is you can tell if somebody's on the left or the right of the Labour Party, basically by their love for America. That is still a simplistic way of putting it, but it's not a bad way of looking at it at all. So Bevan, I think, would have broken bread with Blair, but he would have had issues with Blair's attitude towards privatisation and thinking that privatisation is more efficient when it comes to getting results out of any given system. Some people just believe privatisation does work in that respect. Bevan wouldn't have believed in that for the NHS, but I believe they would have been able to talk. I don't think there would have been, the big argument that people think there might have been. I think they would have been able to have a conversation. There are certain people in the Labour Party that Bevan would not have had any time for. I think, for example, Corbyn, he wouldn't have had any time for, but Jennie Lee and Corbyn would have got on very well. It's just one of those things that helps you think that, they were both very different personalities within the Labour Party. But if there's privatisation in the NHS, I think Bevan would have had an issue with that, yeah.
Well, actually, on that then, the last one we've got coming in now, and I think it's going to be, I'm going to tie up, unless there's other questions coming in, I don't think there are, I think we've answered them all, is somebody's put in, we are still being led by the laughing voice from Eton, and brilliant, NHS is being slowly sold out to private interest. Watch out for the Americans. Where Nye wanted the Americans to join the war, surely he wouldn't want getting their hands on the NHS, although they are already supplying NHS with PPE. I learned stuff from this play, great meeting the cast director, writer, brilliant, dig mas o dig. So I think that's a great way to end this evening. I'm sure, there may be some questions that that people would want to put to us. And please just email us at drama@theatrenanorg.co.uk and we'll answer them. We'll be more than happy to do that. I hope you've enjoyed yourself. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank everybody that was involved with the production. I know we've mentioned them tonight. There's designer Kitty Callister, the lighting designer Harris Strutakov, the composer Jack Poe, help me out here, choreographer Maggie Rawlinson, the
voice coach Emma Stevens-Johnson.
Emma Stevens-Johnson. We also had, in the second one as well, we had an illusionist help us, James Went.
We did have James, yeah, brilliant.
And then the production team, Geraint Chinak, Sasha Dobbs. Oh, look at that, that must be my mother. Really. Sasha Dobbs, Annie O'Callaghan, and Joe Tullock as well, who went on tour. So I think I'm going to have to answer that. Sorry about this. Oh, I actually can't. Sorry. Yeah, so that was all the team and also the co-producers, Irene Leisure, Suzanne Allen up there in Abertillery, who were absolutely phenomenal. Did I leave anybody out there? I hope not.
Don't think so, but we had a great welcome everywhere we went as well. The venues, mainly in Wales. We did Edinburgh as well, but, we were just given such a terrific welcome. And as you said earlier on, Gaynor, it just proves that there's the awch there, the want for drama.
Yeah, definitely. Very last question then. Do you think Nye and Jennie are turning in their graves due to the privatisation of the NHS?
They were both cremated.
And with what's happening with the arts, I think.
Yeah, I think they would be absolutely tamping, wouldn't they? Tamping.
They would have had the sense to see it coming.
Yeah, that's true.
They would have put things in place to make sure that the Laughing Boys of Eton wouldn't have been able to get their mitts on any of it.
Yeah.
They were scattered on the mountain in Tredegar where the Nye Bevan stones are.
Yeah.
So I bet they're up there thinking.
I know, I spent a day trying to work out where he was buried, and then somebody said to me, oh, he's cremated and spread on top of the mountain.
Right then, well, I'm going to say, I'm just going to do a double check. Somebody just said, thank you for bringing local theatre back to us during this time. You're very welcome, and we hope we'll be back on the road again soon. So, diolch yn fawr iawn. Thank you, Gareth. Thank you, Louise. Thank you, Med. Diolch yn fawr iawn. Thank you all for joining us this evening. It's been absolutely wonderful. Diolch yn fawr. Thank you.
Diolch. Nos da.